Hi everyone, Daphne here. I was tagged by JD Calderon on Facebook about a comic cover challenge, and I decided to make a video reply. Although the original tag was really about posting your favorite comic book cover of all time, of course JD had to mix it up a bit and make it his own thing. Instead of a favorite comic cover, the challenge is to list the comics that had an early influence on you creatively, and in this case, it had influence on me creatively. Now, I've been reading comics since I was very young, but I never thought that these comics were comics. They were just things that everyone read. I mean, obviously they are comics, but they're to comics like Candy Crush is to console gaming. But ironically, my first exposure to comics that would change my life happened in a supermarket where I was introduced to the adventures of a certain space raccoon. Rocket Raccoon is the love of my life. Drawn by then unknown Mike Mignola, or Mignola, depending on how you want to pronounce it, or how it's pronounced, it was my first exposure to a non-Disney talking animal comic. And the story was pretty serious for what I was used to at that age. This would be the benchmark of my comic book work, since I don't think I would have ever considered drawing comics as a thing if it wasn't for Rocket Raccoon. The next big discovery for me was at Barnes& Noble, and it was the Starblaze edition of Wendy and Richard Pini's Elfquest. The book showed me that not only could comics be epic, just like any standard book in the fantasy section I was always trolling, but they could be amazingly beautiful. These two titles were pretty much my only exposure to alternative comics. Alternative meaning at the time just comics that weren't in a comic book store. I mean, I was finding everything in supermarkets and bookstores at the time. Um, until I entered high school, and there was a Forbidden Planet a few blocks away. It was there that I was exposed to an entirely new scene of comics. Here, I was introduced to books I would learn quickly was part of the furry subculture, which could be a video all on its own, by the way. People were actively drawing their own animal characters in their own adventures, and they had nothing to do with Disney or Warner Brothers. Here was where I found Critters, published by Fantagraphics. From there, I was able to find individual books like Albedo Anthropomorphics, Cutie Bunny, and Usagi Yojimbo. I was drowning in furry comics, and I couldn't have been happier. Of course, Furry led me down to an even bigger rabbit hole, if you'll excuse the pun, and I found a really indie comics like Vixen's Keep by Mark Wallace. That was probably one of the only old school comics I've managed to hold on to after all this time. About a year or so into high school, I met JD Calderon, who needed an artist at the time to draw his own budding animal comic, Tall Tales. From there, he introduced me to a whole slew of different comics that would continue to influence me to this day. The first book he introduced me to was The Realm by Guy Davis, famous for his paperclip noses and a hybrid manga style long before it became trendy. This book, with its modern kids transported to a fantasy world and really detailed artwork, pushed all my buttons. A lot of my book Tall Tales Thieves Quest takes so much from this series, I probably owe Guy Davis money. I don't remember what order I was introduced to the next couple of books, but the main one I remember was Green Arrow, The Longbow Hunters by Mike Grell, Batman the Cult with Bernie Wrightson, and Cinder and Ash by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. That last one I think I found on my own, since JD is still pretty surprised I have this one in my collection. In fact, the copies I have are duplicates that JD found for me at a convention because I was so sad that I had lost my original copy somewhere. Another book that JD introduced me to that had a huge influence was X-Men, the Exoguardian Wars, featuring art by Arthur Adams, the only artist whose owning an original commission piece of art from him is considered bucket list material. Hashtag I'm not Arthur Adams. Next on the list of comics that I stole from JD Calderon, I mean comics that influenced me as an artist, is The Black Dragon with art by John Bolton. I am so happy that this book was printed in black and white, for I don't think I would have had any appreciation for the work had it been in color. So rounding off this collection is the more modern Artesia by Mark Smiley, for which I don't think we'll ever see past its third trade volume, and my perennial favorite, Animal Mystic by Greg Dark One Williams, who keeps promising a new series but hasn't put out any new Animal Mystic comics in years. So, message to Mark and Greg, I'm still waiting. So when you guys decide to finally put out new books, I got my money right here for you guys, okay? So of course, I have one honorable mention that I would be remiss in not having here. Omaha the Cat Dancer by Reed Waller and Kate Worley was my first adult comic. Not only is the artwork beautiful in its own way, but this comic is the one that I can say got me hooked on a soap opera story, which is a really hard thing to do because I really have no patience in those types of stories, but this book managed to do it. What really made this comic unusual is the way that it realistically handled sex scenes instead of the usual lurid anatomy scenes that most porn is apt to do. Omaha was porn for people with brains. Unfortunately, Kate Worley passed before the book could be completed, and I haven't heard any movement on collecting anything in the new trade or a new trade at all. But like Artesia and Animal Mystic, if they decide to complete or collect this series, I'll be waiting with my money. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I tag everyone watching this to tell me what their influential comics were. And by the way, in the spirit of the original tag, here's my favorite comic book cover of all time. What? It's a raccoon riding a robot horse. Were you expecting something different? See you on the next video. Bye.